What's up? We're going to talk about midterms. Are you guys hyped? We didn't get our second yoga energizer, so I have to just give that energy back because we're about to have a good discussion. So as our panelists come up, I'm going to go over some of the amazing highlights. It was just this week. Midterms just happened. It feels like it's been a year ago, but it did happen. And there were some amazing things that happened. We have over 100 women going to Congress. I mean, shout out for that. So far, there are 9 female governors. We'll see what goes on in Georgia that have been elected. Well, a bunch of firsts. We had the first Muslim woman, the first Native American woman, the youngest woman. The list goes on and on and on. And incredibly, we had the best voter turnout for young people. So we had 1/3 of young voters that's 18 to 29. That is amazing. Last time we had midterms, it was 21%. So that's awesome. The U.S. had its largest turnout since 1966, and South Carolina had its second highest turnout. So midterms are really kicking it. So now I have the distinct pleasure of moderating a panel with some amazing folks that are going to hit on the federal, state, and local level issues that came up during the midterms, the ways we can get involved after the midterms. And I'm just really excited. I like to let my panel introduce themselves because nobody introduces themselves better than themselves. And I'm going to start on my very far side with Shilpa.
Hi, is this on? You guys hear me okay? Yeah? Oh, good. Oh, thank you. It's so great to be here. My name is Shilpa Phadke, and I'm the Vice President for Women's Issues at the Center for American Progress, which is a progressive think tank in DC. We are an umbrella organization. We have 17 policy teams, so I get to work closely with my colleagues that work on healthcare and economics and national security and the environment. We're also an action tank, and so we really look for the gaps in the research and then try to drive those policies and make impact, whether that's at the federal or state level. So I'm really excited to be here to learn more about what's happening. And I should also say I just have a particular fondness for the South lately. I think there is a lot of excitement and energy here. Ann and I were together in Atlanta earlier this year. I was in Texas last year. And we are really committed to working with you all and being real partners and sort of driving a broad equity agenda here.
Good afternoon. My name is Liz Seman. I'm the Chief of Staff here at Furman University and also a member of Greenville County Council. I was first elected in 2008. I represent District 24, which is sort of the Augusta Road corridor, which encompasses a good part of the city of Greenville along with parts of the city of Malden. I currently chair our Public Works Committee and sit on our Finance Committee, and just look forward to having a good conversation with you all today.
Well, good afternoon. I'm Chandra Dillard, and I am the Director of Community Relations here at Furman. There's a theme going on here. And I also am honored to represent House District 23 in the South Carolina House of Representatives, where I have served for 10 years. I am a ranking member of the Agriculture and Natural Resources Committee, and I chair the subcommittee on environmental affairs, making me the first woman to do so. And I also serve on the House Ethics Committee and the Legislative Oversight Committee. Prior to my service in the House, I served on Greenville City Council for 9 years. So I am very delighted to be here today. We've talked about some very important issues, and I look forward to further discussion on them.
My name is Amy Ryberg. Oh, push the button, sorry. My name is Amy Ryberg Doyle. I serve on Greenville City Council. I first ran for office because I thought a young mother was an important voice at the table. And I'm not as young anymore. I have 4 children, one of which I had between my an election cycle. I will tell you, having served with Chandra, who took me around the first week I was elected and took me around to show her district. I'm really a boots on the ground type of person. I had a former business of my own. I was in the internet space in the early 90s building e-commerce systems, and I'm just happy to serve. I chair the Planning and Neighborhoods Committee, which encompasses roads and parks and trails and corridor and redevelopment. Happy to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. So my first question to our panel is just getting their general reactions about the midterms, really focusing on each of your levels of government if you can, or if you want to add in a different reaction, go ahead. And I am going to start in the reverse way. So right there.
Oh yeah, thank you. Well, we're certainly excited to see that with such good voter turnout. None of our city elections are on the off years, so we had nobody on our city council on the ballot. So we are partisan in the city of Greenville. We have so many of our people that we worked for and worked with were within party. But I'll tell you, a lot of times on city council, and most times on city council, we deal with non-partisan issues, and so we work in a bipartisan way. So I was thrilled to see the turnout, and certainly sending William Timmons to Congress is going to be great for the city of Greenville.
Well, thank you. You know, I'm really excited about the midterms. I mean, yay for voter turnout, yay for all the women. You know. And I am I started looking at even our landscape in the South Carolina House. I believe we have picked up several women, female legislators, and so I'm very excited to get to know them and to work with them. And so we will see. And you know, just in general, the landscape in South Carolina, adding diversity to our congressional delegation as well with the election of Joe Cunningham. So there were a lot of wins, in my opinion, diversity. We've talked about that here, and so that goes on both sides of the aisle. And so I look forward to further discussion on that and working with all these great people.
Yeah. So at the county level, currently there are only 2 women on county council, myself and Ms. Xanthi Norris, and she was on the ballot and won re-election. Across the state, in our 46 counties, there are only 43. I only have 43 colleagues across the state. So that means that some counties have no women serving on their council, and others have more than one. So there's still some work to do. I think there was a headline in the Greenville News or maybe on YFF the other day that said the female wave did not hit South Carolina. So even though we did have some women on the ballot, I think we still have a long way to go in terms of encouraging more of those of you sitting around the room to consider putting your names up for service.
So in DC, I would say we thought it was a great night for women. I think having, you know, over 100 women returning and the additions of some really new, diverse women in Congress is going to make a really big difference. I think we're really excited about it. I think that if, you know, most of that increase in membership comes from Democrats, so it'll be interesting to see the difference it makes. And that's actually what I wanted to just touch upon broadly. We talk a lot about getting women, you know, asking women, you have to ask them 7 times, getting them to run, supporting them early, continuing that support. But we don't talk as much about why it matters. And so just briefly, I wanted to touch upon, you know, a little bit of what the research shows. First, and this won't be surprising, women tend to care more about women and families. And so they sponsor more bills that impact women and families. They tend to be better on process. They work, you know, better across the aisle. I would love to hear more about how you all do that. They tend to just work more collegially, find solutions. When women are in power in an elective office, more women voters get engaged because they start to see people that look like them making decisions and sort of taking on issues. And so it really engages an electorate. And then, as you know, we were just hearing about and learning about, they serve as models for girls. So if we really want to increase the bench of women, you know, we have to start exposing young girls to what it means to have a woman in office. And so it's really exciting to talk about the difference and the numbers, but I think we have to remind ourselves about why it matters and sort of come home to that.
Awesome. And how did issues that affect women, like the Me Too movement, potentially impact the midterms? Good, bad, indifferent? Shilpa, if you want to just build and come back. You notice I like to zipper back and forth.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, I think it made a difference. I think one of the things that we're looking at now is exit polls. Sort of they're mixed, but I think we're seeing that more independent women, you know, veered a little bit to the left in this last national, you know, election campaign, and that gender gap is real. I think I would also say That's, I think, in response to President Trump a little bit, but also in response to sexual harassment being such, central to the conversation more recently. So, I think we've started the work, but I think it's up to us to show that we can actually make concrete change. I think the last year and a half, as we think about the Me Too movement, has centered a lot on stories and stories of survivors, and it's really important for us to start that conversation centered on survivors. But now it's time for concrete action. So now it's time for us to really start looking at policies that will actually change people's lives.
I think one of the things is so interesting that DC seems so far away from Greenville in some sense. And so everything that we see on the news, on TV at night, and sort of the extremes on either end, I think ultimately does trickle down here locally, maybe not so much on an issue basis, but just sentiment around whether people are angry with their elected officials in DC, that trickles down to maybe being angry with your elected officials in Columbia, which then trickles down to being angry with your elected officials locally. So I think as a local elected official, it's very important to be paying attention to what's happening on the national scale. But I think from an issue perspective, for us, it boils down to things like housing and transportation, and not so much maybe some of the broader national issues that we're seeing played out on TV and other places.
I do think that with the last presidential election and what has ensued since, in between the 2 years, all the dynamics that we see on television have made women realize that they need to be at the table rather than on the plate. And so I think there has been an awakening that, hey, they're eating our lunch, and, we're not doing as well as we should be doing the very conversations that we're having here. So that has energized women, and I'm excited about it. I hope that since the election has come and gone, though, our job is to govern. It is to set policy. And for the women who were engaged, I hope that them will continue to be engaged and to learn the process, be a part of the process. Not just on Mondays, I think that's important, going down and having your voice heard on Main Street, but coming down to the State House saying this policy is good. It will move the needle because of this data that we heard today. And to begin to have those conversations, and that's the other part of the process that sometimes I think is lost, because it is not an exciting time always. It is work to do. I mean, I think it's exciting just because, I'm just kind of nerdy like that. But to really be a part of the process, to help move an agenda and to learn what it takes to move an agenda, and that's where I hope this conversation will go.
I think one of the good things about the Me Too movement is that we can start to talk to our daughters and our sons about some of these issues where perhaps, Gen X and baby boomers did not have that conversation. So I think that this is really critical in the home. And I certainly take that responsibility as a mother. Chandra brings up a really good point, which is elections engage people, and you have the cell phones of a lot of these people when they were asking for your vote. Now ask them for their policy, right? And hold them accountable to that, because that's your job and that's their job. So one of the things I am encouraged about is that the engagement and the high activity around various policy. So as Chandra said, that is our job now, to govern.
Those are awesome comments, especially because it leads right into my next question, which is about the different ways women participated in this election. So we've heard that they don't want to be on the plate anymore. They want to be sitting at the table. And so let's talk about how they engaged, not only by running for office, but other ways in your community that you've seen women step up during this election cycle. And I'll go with you.
Well, yeah. I'll tell you, in the city of Greenville, we have 130 boards and commission positions, and we are constantly trying to recruit good people to serve on those boards and commissions, whether it be the Planning Commission, the Design Review Board, the Arts and Public Places, the Public Safety Commission. These are critical boards, and they make big decisions that change the landscape of Greenville, that change policy. They review police internal affairs reports. These are critical things. And when people come to City Hall and they don't see diversity in a board, it's frustrating to people. So we're constantly looking for that. So I would encourage you, wherever you live, to look at the boards and commissions available in your municipality, or certainly in the city of Greenville, because we'd love to have you there.
Mm-hmm. I always like to share that in the political ecosystem, there is a place for everyone. You know, get in where you fit in, and that's where you feel most comfortable, whether it's running for office or serving on a board or commission. But too, like the city, my local colleagues here, the state also has boards and commissions that we seek to fill on a routine basis. Some of that service is in the state of South Carolina, you know, traveling to Columbia, but a lot of it's right here in Greenville. In the delegation, we appoint people, as I said, on a routine basis. And so we are in desperate need of diversity and expertise that you have. So I would encourage you to do that. Also, we talked about working. Most of you are associated with whatever your line of work is. There is a state association who is advocating on behalf of your work in some kind of way. That's who I see every day when I'm in Columbia. I would encourage you to get involved with them, help them shape that legislative agenda, so that as someone who works in that industry, you know what is going to help that industry. So there are always legislative days, and you know, come down. It's your state house. I tell people that all the time. We're just occupants for as long as you will allow us to occupy the space, but it really is your government, and so there are different ways you can engage in that process as well.
Yeah, I'll pick up on something that Chandra said. I love that, the political ecosystem. So if running for office isn't your thing, find a candidate that you can get behind, male or female. You know, it takes a lot to run for office. It takes money, it takes volunteer power, it takes strategy, but for each candidate, it takes a group of really trusted advisors around that person who can help provide advice, who can be boots on the ground, who can knock on doors. And so it's also a way, if you have any interest in running, a way to kind of get your feet wet. So I think it's really important to be involved that way. And you know, voting is certainly important too, but you know, kind of backing all the way down to kind of the early stage. The other thing I would say too, as far as engagement, and picking up on something that Amy said, get to know your elected officials, call them, email them, voice your opinion. You know, my advice always to folks is to make it as personal as you can be. So often we get sort of robocalls or forum emails on an issue, and I would rather hear from somebody about an issue, what you feel like, and then why that issue is important to you. So do your best to sort of make it personal, because the chances of you getting a response from an elected official are much greater if it's more of a personal conversation. And my other just piece of advice too is also to be nice. You would be surprised how angry some people are, and then there's just, I mean, it's just hard to have a conversation with somebody who's combative from the very beginning, and that's a space too that I think that as women we can change that part of the conversation. We are so much more likely to be open to different points of view and being able to have a conversation, and that even if we disagree on the issue, it does not mean that we think that one another are bad people, or that we can't disagree on this issue but then we agree on the next one, and then you know we can still be friends and still be colleagues. And for me, that's one of the big reasons why we need to have more women in office, to help tone down the rhetoric and to have real conversations about how we're going to make change. I would also say too, it has been my experience, my female colleagues, Chandra and Amy included, we're not in it for ego. We're not in it because we get a parking space with our name on it. We're not in it to be reelected, we're in it to do the service. And so often you find some of our male counterparts everything is all about the reelection. And so for me also, that's an important reason why we need to have more women sitting in places.
One of the issues I meant to bring up earlier is we were talking about the Me Too movement and sort of engaging women. I actually think, though all of those issues were around, for a lot of women, this election was about healthcare, about access to healthcare and protecting women that have, pre-existing conditions. And one of the tactics that we saw that was really successful was storytelling. And I think you all are having a storytelling section later. But we did, from the Center of American Progress, we did a series of videos of women and men and families struggling with healthcare in the specific congressional districts around the country that we were trying to flip. And it really resonated with people. I think being able to connect the policy with the personal story is always just really important. I think everybody has a story, and so I would encourage folks in this digital age. I mean, it's video, it's Twitter, it's Facebook, it's op-eds, of course, but the ability to sort of connect you and your story and your community to a larger policy is very effective, and I feel like we've seen a lot of that in the last year or two.
Awesome, and you've touched on it before, I'm on my zipper. So you touched on it a little bit earlier about how women govern differently. My next question was going to ask each panelist if they felt that women govern differently regardless of party and what ways they've seen that play out. So if you want to go deeper on that topic, you can, or you can pivot and ask your fellow panelists to keep going.
Yeah, I think I will defer that question since I'm not an elected official, but I would say just watching it, right? Like we've watched on the federal level, we've watched women of both parties have to come in and save the day. When people can't agree about the budget or shutting down government, it's the women senators, from both sides of the aisle that have to get together and fix it. So I think we've watched that time and time again, and there just aren't enough. And so we really have to do our best to dig deep and just get more women to run so that the numbers are just more in favor, but I think we've seen it time and time again.
Yeah. Now, in some sense, I think we're a little more practical and no nonsense. I think about the way, I even run my committee meetings differs from the way my male counterparts might run their committee meetings. I also think we're much more open to compromise. We don't get so stuck in our ways that we impede progress because we're not willing to budge on an issue. I think for sure it would be helpful to have more of us around the table so that there's more than maybe just one or two voices kind of in that space.
We definitely govern differently. I go back to my early days when I was elected on city council, and I shared this story here at Furman recently. We had a women's event. I didn't know at the time that when I ran in 1999 that I would be a part of the first female majority city council in the city of Greenville. Actually, we were the majority anywhere in the state. But we made a conscious decision, and there were Democrats and a Republican female. We made a conscious decision that we would be women first and our party label would be second. And so we were able to do some really amazing things for Greenville. Now, did we always disagree? Agree? No, even the Democrats didn't always agree. We're people. We're going to have disagreements, and you work those things out. That's why it's called dialogue and building consensus. But that taught me a huge lesson, and I took that with me to the State House. And it's interesting that I see young women who come in to the body. They're fresh off the campaign trail, and soon they have to realize that the rhetoric stops on the campaign trail, and that we must govern and we must talk to each other and work together. And so I slowly see the ice kind of melting, and then we talk and we say, we're women in this body, and if nothing else unites us, we've got to let that unite us. And we're going to have differences on some of the issues. That's why we're here. That's why the voters sent us here. But, I do think that has been something that I've always tried to keep in mind and work with people and see them, the ladies and the men, as people first and not the party label.
I don't think I could add anything more, but I will say that I read a recent book about succession, and women do more succession planning. And I think, statistically, women have to be asked to run for office. But I would say that from my perspective, there is a little bit more nurturing in terms of building your bench from women, going out and recruiting people to engage, going out and activating kind of your advisory group, your campaign group. So I would say that, but also say that women, from my perspective, I just want to see things get done. So I want to be efficient, and I'm not really sure that I need to take credit for it. So I think that there might be a little bit of difference in that.
Yes.
That was an awesome answer. Yeah. Well, so you talked about building the bench. So we've got a lot of amazing women and some pretty cool guys in here too. And how do we engage them more? I know you talked about going for boards and commissions at the local level. Let's give them that step up. Like, why are they qualified to do it? And what kind of encouragement would you give them to take that next step?
Well, I would say Jody McLean, who's the CEO of Eden's, spoke yesterday at the Athena lunch, and she mentioned a really interesting statistic. And she said that women, when they consider to be promoted, they have to feel 100% capable, whereas men might feel 60% capable. Well, I'll tell you, I don't think I've felt 100% about anything ever in my whole life. But I will say that that's kind of an interesting statistic to kind of meditate on, and that is that we are not always going to be 100% there, and that's okay. I would say that if there's doubt in your mind about running for office, if there's concern that you're not qualified enough, I would say that that's okay. That's pretty normal. I would say activating your network and using your network to kind of help you guide your decisions. And that's pretty powerful. Your mom network, your friend network, your work network, to help you make those decisions.
And I would just add to what Amy said, that if you're really thinking about running for office, we always have made ourselves available. Go pull on somebody's coattail and say, what is that really about? What is the job? And barring that we're not perfect, we're admitting that up front, and you don't have to be, and you don't have to have all the answers, because once you're elected, we have excellent staff. We have a support system that surrounds us and helps us look good. We just don't look good on our own. We have a lot of help, once we make it over the threshold. And so, but I would say that if you're really interested in local government or state government, call one of us. Come down to the State House, watch it. I can get you on the floor, up close and personal. You might run away after that, but at least you will know. No, I'm just kidding. No, but I invite you to let's talk about it. What is the job? So that it takes the mystery out of it and will make you more comfortable, because you're fine just the way you are. Okay.
So there are 22 countywide boards and commissions. There are more. We've got special purpose districts and other things that we appoint, but our basic 20, we have 22, and we have 38 women serving across those boards, which isn't horrible. I will tell you, I always encourage people to apply for boards and commissions. It happens in February and July of every year, and it's all online. All of them are online. You can do your application online. But my piece of advice is going to be, please don't give up if you don't get on the first time. Because as you can imagine, just like in office, there are people who have been on some of these boards and commissions for a really, 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 really long time. So when they come up for reappointment, and again, on county council, we're all single member districts. And so a lot of times if there's somebody from somebody's district who's up for reappointment, it's it's just sort of a little self-perpetuating, which is again, the importance of having more women, on the dais or helping make the decisions, who are more likely to vote for the person who is most qualified as opposed to voting for a person who's a buddy's friend. So if you do apply and you do come and interview and you don't get appointed, please, please, please try again. Because just the more good candidates we can keep putting in front of people, hopefully people will realize we need to start making some change there. And the same for if you run for office. You may get lucky on your first time and you may not. And if you don't happen to win, take everything you learned and continue to grow your network and then go out again the next time. Because you'll have all that experience behind you the next time when you're up again.
I would just say, I think the last 2 years we've seen a lot of women just waking up and deciding it was time. You know, before women might feel like they were too young, or they had kids and it wasn't a good time, or they were at a peak point in their career and it wasn't a good time, or you could sort of come up with lots of reasons. And then recently I've just been seeing people say, oh no, it's now. And they've sort of been bucking the trend of doing the things that are really hard, right? Part of the reason women aren't in office, it's structural. I mean, we should just start with that. It's not about individual women that they don't have it, it's a structural problem, and that it's hard to raise money. And campaign finance laws aren't there to sort of assist people with getting out of the gate, that state party officials don't recruit women, and those are networks, and it's hard to break through those networks and gates. And so first we should remind ourselves that these are structural issues and there are policy solutions to them. But we've seen in this last year or two, women just sort of saying, like, I'll take on an incumbent. I'll take on someone that's been there for 12 years. I'll run in an all-male primary. And they're winning. And they're really changing the face of what government looks like. And so I think all of the many reasons that so many women that are in office have been battling and pushing through, I've just really seen that change. That people are just saying, it's time, it's my time, I'm gonna go for it. And you'll see women on the campaign trail with their young kids. I met a delegate from Virginia who had 2 twins, like 6 months old, and she was knocking doors with both of them, taking breaks. And so I also think that really connects with people. In a real way, lots of moms can appeal to other moms, and people with young kids know that person is going to fight hard for childcare or to get access to paid family leave. And I think those connections are great. So my recommendation is don't wait, start now.
Can I make a comment about raising money? Because that is really the elephant in the room for women. And I'll tell you, I have raised money for my company and I've raised money for my campaign, and it is hard. But I don't know who told me this piece of advice, but I really think about it. And I'm totally comfortable with it. And picture the other person with the ability to say no. And then it kind of just relieves you of that feeling that they're going to say yes or no. Just, they can say no, they have that choice. And I picture it kind of in my head sometimes, a Girl Scout coming to your door. You have that choice to say yes or no. Are you going to say no to someone earnest selling those fabulous cookies? So I will tell you that the more you do something, yoga, writing, your job, mothering, being a good daughter, the more you do it, the better you get at it. So get good at it. Get good at it.
Oh, more good advice coming out of this panel. I've got one final question from these amazing women, and it's, now that the midterms are over, elections are over, so what opportunities do we have looking forward for advancing the health and well-being of women and girls? I'm going to start with Shilpa.
I have a lot to say about this piece. We've been spending a lot of time thinking about an agenda for the new House, and one that really centers on working families. And so what I hope to see, and that's something I think that will resonate, is basically a focus on wages. Women, I mean, you heard it throughout the day, women need to get paid for their work equally. And that wage gap is persistent and it is stubborn, and so we really have to dig in. And so the first thing that we're really looking for the House to take on is the Paycheck Fairness Act. I think some of you might remember President Obama, the first bill he signed into law was the Lilly Ledbetter bill. It would have helped people like Lilly have their day in court, but it really doesn't do all the things that we need to do to get to equal pay in terms of protections around retaliations and sort of just making businesses justify why they're paying women less. So we're really excited to take that first step and make a very strong push for paycheck fairness. And wages writ large, that's pushing for the minimum wage. part of the minimum wage. I think most folks know women are in most states half, if not 2/3 of minimum wage workers. Getting to 15 or more will make a critical difference in the lives of their families and to make state economies more dynamic. Teachers' wages, I think, is something we've seen a lot of energy around, and I think we're really hopeful that Congress can start thinking really creatively about how we're going to boost the wages of teachers around the country. So that's a starting place. And I'm very hopeful that we'll make a dent in progress on things like paid sick days and paid family leave, childcare. All of these issues are really critical to working families. When you look at the stalled labor force participation, it's not hard to know why. Women are doing more and more caregiving and they have no supports. And so until we sort of figure that piece out, I think, especially at a federal level, because there's just no chance for every state to pass like a really robust plan on all of these policies. And so we're really looking at the federal level to try to make that progress quickly and not have to wait for every state to pass their own law. Then I think we'll see a real difference in sort of the bigger economic issue. And the last thing I would say is we can't sort of separate out women's health and rights from a conversation about women's economic success and opportunity, whether we're talking about the really stark disparities around maternal health or we're talking about access to family planning. I think we have to be really, really just tough on that and not letting folks sort of try to take those two issues and sort of separate them. And for the ability for women to sort of plan how and when they want to have their families is really, critical to their careers and their overall economic success. So that's what we're hoping for. It's a big agenda that has a lot of other things too in terms of campaign finance reform and political corruption and some equity big pieces, but I think that's what our eyes are on. It's a pretty big challenge for Congress, but we're hoping we can make a dent.
Yeah, so I mentioned this earlier, but I think for the county, the focus on affordable housing and transportation, the city has really done a really good job of this, and the county, hopefully will step up and do our part. And I also just think for us too, the ability to continue to listen to our nonprofit partners who are experts in some of those areas and embrace them sort of as part of the team, especially as we head into our comprehensive planning process after the first year. I think that will be critical for us as a county to really be much more transparent and open and bring more people to the table to have those conversations moving forward.
My hope is what I said earlier, that the enthusiasm that was brought to bear on the campaign trail, I really do hope that will translate into advocacy for good public policy. I know that WREN will be presenting a legislative agenda. I saw it on the agenda. It's next. And so there's a body of bright women in this room. Get behind that agenda. We know what's at stake. Don't let WREN do it alone. And numbers speak volumes to my colleagues. So that is my hope, that the enthusiasm will translate into good public policy for women and for this state.
Well, I would say on a local issue, for those of you that are longtime Greenvillians, you've seen the success of downtown Greenville. What we'd like to see is the success of all the neighborhoods in Greenville, all of the neighborhoods in Greenville. And so really, all boats should rise with success. And that's been our goal, is to invest in economic development such as affordable housing and transportation and neighborhood parks and connectivity, and really looking at what is the Greenville that we want to be in 2040, and what are we missing. And so I think our goal for the city is to continue to continue to be that terrific world-class city, but to make sure that all of the neighborhoods and all of the people are engaged. And my personal goal is, to obviously to continue to be a mother, but to be accessible and to be known as a worker and to kind of continue to move forward. So.
Well, join me in thanking these incredible women. It was a great. And Emmy's giving me the signal that I'm gonna get to let you guys ask some questions. Oh, Mac just jumped up. Oh, y'all buckle up. She said 10 minutes, so yeah.
Okay, not for me. Okay, I'm back. Melissa Cunningham-Sarik, owner of Motivation and Achievement Concepts, a career development company. The majority of my clients, I'm pissed. The majority of my clients are job seekers, and they are currently working. And my office, my husband and I renovated a house. My office is on the side, sort of what I call the west wing, even though it's the southeast of the house. And my office and my home both stare into, well, not into, that's kind of creepy, the oldest dorm at Converse College. I was born and raised in Spartanburg and know this area. So walk me through this. We all understand, I keep hearing things about, obviously we need better wages. And I understand, even if you don't believe, that the number one thing to better wages, including and pay equity for women, is pay transparency. Mm-hmm. Do we agree? Right? Number one, pay transparency. You're going to hear in a minute that the pay transparency bill that, well, I don't know, I'm sure Brandy's going to talk about that, but the key to pay transparency bills, the two main things are, one, that companies shouldn't be allowed to ask pay history. Totally support that, absolutely agree. The other thing I absolutely agree with is that every job posting should have the pay range posted. So, Shilpa, the Center for American Progress does not do that. I expect it to be changed today. Converse College, I've already busted their president. She can egg my house, she knows where it is. If we're talking about closing the gap, because guess what, better wages, I'm shaking on Seman. Better wages means that women don't work two jobs, so they can come lobby for Congress. They can serve on a board. They can at least go campaign for somebody. They have the time and the energy to go lobby and be a part of this process or even be in this room. So I find it very hypocritical that Furman does not post the pay ranges, but yet they're supposed to be supporting the women that they are graduating, and they can't even do it internally for their jobs. Do y'all see what I'm saying? So if y'all pull up your website, if you go right now to Furman, to Wofford, and I'm a Wofford alum, Converse, and several of y'all, the city of Greenville, y'all do it, but y'all are a public thing. So here we are talking about this, and these institutions do not do it for their internal jobs. So I'm very mad, and I expect that to be changed very soon.
Yeah. Can I respond to that quickly? So I think one of the reasons that we need to pass the Paycheck Fairness Act is that part of that is pay data transparency. The Obama administration had an effort to do that through the EEO-1 form at the EEOC. The Trump administration, that was one of the first things they did on equal pay, was take away the right for people to collect information on pay transparency. So that's a huge part of why we need paycheck fairness, is to push that. The other bill out there at the congressional level, or you'll start to see, is called the Fair Pay Act. Part of that is going to be a piece on job salary bands. It's a huge piece. Not asking for prior salary history, because as we all know, women don't negotiate for themselves as much as they need to. And actually posting the bands is a huge piece. But the other piece to all that is enforcement. If we don't have the dollars at state and federal enforcement agencies to actually have some teeth to those laws, I mean, there's no reason to comply. So.
But y'all should be the example.
I agree, yeah.
Hi, my name is Dawn Dowden. I work for Homes of Hope, and we appreciate all the work you guys do locally for affordable housing. So the question, I was in leadership Greenville a couple of years ago, and we went down to the State House and had conversations with a lot of folks there. And of course, the challenge from the system perspective is that a lot of women can't go down to Columbia because they're moms and they have a challenge with, all of the different things. I'm getting texts currently from my 15-year-old son. So all of those different challenges and even the occupations. So I know we talked a little bit about the importance, a while ago, about the importance of flexibility and how that helps women in careers. So are there any conversations from, the local level to the state level to the federal level of talking about system issues where it would allow, again, not even occupation diversity, where you do have the flexibility within your occupation so folks could, women in the room and other folks in other occupations could participate at the city level, city, county, state, as well as the federal level.
I'd just like to share on that. I think I'm a pretty good example of someone who's had to navigate that. When I first decided I wanted to run for public office, I'm not married, so I didn't have a husband to consult, but I do have a a mother, you know, and you have to consider your whole support system. So after we talked about it, the next step was my employer at the time, and I did not work at Furman back in that time. And so, you know, I was quite honest and frank and said, you know, if I win this thing, you know, this 8 to 5 rigid schedule, it does not allow for even city council work. You know, we come and go, we meet people, and so having a conversation, and that's what I mean by if you're really interested in running, we assess the landscape. You know, and sometimes you need to be with an employer who values your civic participation. You see Liz and I sitting here. There's a value with Furman, and we're not the only elected officials who work here, but see value, and I work here at the university as well as our community work. So I would say you need to have that conversation with your employer. Also, you don't do this job alone. You need a network. The women who serve in the State House have children. You know, I asked them, one drives home every night. She's 30 miles away, Columbia to Camden. I saw her have a baby on a Wednesday and came back the next Wednesday. I told her that wasn't good for FMLA. You know, I'm like, what? You know, here we are trying to promote. But I have seen all kinds of arrangements, and what I'm saying to you is that even within that structure, it is doable, but you need to find how it is doable for you.
Hey, mention too for folks that when the legislative delegation meets here, so that they don't have to go away to Columbia all the time to go talk to y'all.
Oh, Liz was saying that, you know, if you should want to talk with the delegation, we're here. We have meetings 4 times a year, just like city council meetings and county council meetings. So we do that here. So if any of you ever want to come and talk to us and see us, we're available.
I would also just say there are some groups like Moms Rising that try to do their lobbying days and events like with the kids. So they'll do like stroller marches or other activities where like everyone has their kids so it's not disruptive and it's sort of part of the expected conversation.
Hi, ladies. I'm Samantha Wallace. I know 3 of the 4 of you. I want to thank you, the 3 that are serving and representing us. I find you all very inspiring, and I'm grateful you're here today. I am one of the organizing committee founding members of Emerge South Carolina, and I'm the board chair. So I'm deeply committed. I happen to be on one side of the political spectrum, but I'm deeply committed to getting women to step forward and run for office. And I guess I would like it to get just a wee bit personal, because it is true, you have to ask women a lot. I feel like this room is ripe with amazing potential. So everyone should run for office in this room. If I'm the first time telling you that, or the 7th, I hope you consider it. But I think what we find is people feel it's exposed. It's kind of raw. It's a kind of vicious arena. And with all of you being so seasoned, with the 3 of you that represent, I'm curious to know what you've learned over the years of how to deal with that reality, because it certainly seems to be getting more edgy, not less. And so if that's one of the main hesitations for women, they feel it's exposing, it's not dangerous, but just, you know. It's
sometimes it's dangerous.
Right. So yeah. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, sure.
What have you learned over the years?
So I would say, for me, one of the hardest things has been to come to a meeting and know that there are 150 or 200 people in the room who all want you to vote no, but you know the right answer is to vote yes. And it's hard because you just, just kind of like here, you're sitting on the dais and everyone's sort of looking at you, and you know, we're elected to do what we think is best for the entire county, not just what's right for my little district. Sometimes it might not be my personal thought, but I've got to do what's best for our community, and sometimes that's in conflict with all these people who are sitting in front of you. So, you know, just learning that we're not perfect, and we try, you know, you just got to do your homework and read as much as you can and ask questions and feel confident when you vote on something. But that also takes time and practice, and I think also as women we're just more sensitive to that a little bit. I'm not sure my male counterparts feel, I've never asked them, but I don't sense maybe that they worry about that maybe as much as I do in some sense. I also think it's hard, I've said this the other day here, I mean, I've gotten some really nasty messages on my home phone when my son was younger, and you know, things that he could hear, and people just sort of being pretty nasty, and you have to have some thick skin to do it, because people are not always going to be nice, and some of it is just time. But all that to say, I mean, it's reality, but you can do it because we're stronger than we think we are, and it's those kind of things when they happen, you know, being able to, Chandra and I laugh a lot, our offices used to be right next to each other, and so we'd have the ability to kind of just sort of vent to each other a little bit, and I would, you know, ask for advice on how to do those things, which is why your network support is important. But those moments are really rare in the scheme of things also. So it's not, every meeting is not like that, but every once in a while they are, and you sort of have to be prepared and be confident that you've done your homework and you're doing the right thing.
Yeah, I don't have a lot more to add to that other than what I have seen is a change. I think the internal ecosystem is the same, but the external has changed since I've been serving. I agree with Liz, people are a lot less tolerant, a lot less kind, and there's an ownership of the elected official that I didn't see, whether you voted for me or not. Most of the time it's not. I know you didn't vote for me if you're saying these things to me, because you wouldn't come to me in that tone that you are using, or you're saying those things on the email. So social media has added a level of contact in a way that sometimes is not good. I mean, it is a good tool. It can be used for good, and it can be used for things not so good. And so I agree with Liz, you know, you're tougher than you think you are. You don't have to respond in the same way that someone is talking to you. You know, I am quick to take down the rhetoric. I'm not using that tone with you. Why are you using that tone with me? So I just think that it is part of the business. It's part of maybe one of the nicest parts. But again, it doesn't happen every day, but it's part of the job. It can be.
Yeah. I don't know if I can add anything. I think we all know that there's a really toxic environment out there on social media, and I really practice. I talked a little bit about, you know, a writer writes, right? A mother mothers. You have to practice putting out into the world what you want to see. And I would say, go to your social media and clean it up. And it will feel better, and it will change your whole environment. And I think we do have a responsibility, and we should be putting things out there that we want to see. So that would be my recommendation.
I'm seeing Emmy, you cut one more? Okay. Yep.
Hi, Danny Holt. Thank you so much, all of you, for your time being here and speaking on this panel today. So we've talked a lot about running for office, supporting campaigns, serving on boards, commissions, and how representative leadership is the first step to policy change. But to get representative leadership in-house, we have to be able to vote. So I would love to hear the panel's thoughts on the current state of South Carolinian voting rights and the women access to vote currently in our nation.
What is the voting rights? We're all looking at each other. Can you talk a little bit more about what the voting rights, when you say Voting Rights Act, what does that entail?
Well, we just saw in Florida 1.4 million people get their voting rights restored with an amendment. And also we talked about health care. We talked about child care as a barrier to work. What about child care as a barrier to vote? How we have, you know, our voting is an opt-in system right now rather than an opt-out. I would just love to hear your thoughts on, you know, getting women to participate in their voting rights, but also expanding voting rights.
I can start off quickly and then I'll turn to you. I think we've seen across the country a couple different efforts. I would agree with you that we're seeing some serious voter suppression happening in places like Florida and Georgia. Some voter theft. I mean, voter suppression can look like different things. It can look like only one functioning machine in a 4-hour line. You know, we can look lots of different ways. And so I think as soon as elected officials see the threat, it's very easy to sort of see the two combined. But there are different things that are happening. You know, Oregon just passed a law, which is an opt-in. So basically everyone in the state is registered to vote. Seems pretty simple, actually, to me. And I do think that that's a promising model. I think what they just passed in Florida it was a ballot measure to restore voting rights, is really powerful and will sort of change the demographics quite large. But I think you can't underestimate the sort of hidden power that people have on gerrymandering, and when it comes time to redistrict, and those are secretaries of state, like they're sometimes the less flashy office holder, but the work is really critical to underpin basic democracy. And there's other things like campaign finance. You know, there's a conversation about being able to use your FEC funds to pay for childcare, for example. And so I think we're starting to see some of that, and we need just more of it. We need to create the demand for it.
I think mentally too, I think there was just an article in the paper today too, our voting machines are like from 2004 here. Did anyone read that this morning? Am I making that up? So I mean, minimally here, we need to at least improve the technology we have. And you know, I know maybe it was in Pickens County that a few of the ballot boxes were at the wrong precincts, and so they had to do paper for a while, and then, you know, so there's definitely work to be done in that area.
I guess lastly, I would just say that, you know, the bigger the voter turnout, the better the outcome is going to be, and then we elect the people that we deserve. So I am in favor. Certainly on city elections, we see sometimes between 10 and 15% voter turnout. It is so discouraging. I will take every one of those calls after the election too. So I just would love to see more voter turnout in the city.
Well, great, and I want to give a plug to the League of Women Voters. I know there are some people in the room. They work on voting rights here in South Carolina, so if you want to get more plugged into them, they're an amazing partner and they do great work. So I want to give you that shout out. I saw Lawson. And let's give our panel one more round of applause. Yeah.